Hey, hey. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to Tomb Raider Recreating an Icon. Really super excited to be here because, oh my god, I love this freaking game. Hands up, everybody who's played the game. Nice. Good. Really exciting stuff. We have some really fun stuff planned for you, so I think you're really going to like it. My name is Susan Arendt. I am editor-in-chief of the Escapist, and I am going to be moderating the panel of all these fabulous people who worked so hard to bring you this fantastic game. So what we're going to do, just to let you guys know who all we're dealing with, we're going to go one by one down the panel, and the ladies are going to introduce themselves and explain a little bit about what they do and what they did for the game and how they got involved in the game industry. So we'll start down here with Miss Meagan.
Awesome. Hello. So my name is Meagan Marie, and I'm the Community and Communications Manager at Crystal Dynamics. Before this, I was actually an associate editor at Game Informer magazine, which is how I got this job. I wrote the cover story for Tomb Raider a couple years ago. That worked out nicely. I also have been a huge Tomb Raider fan since I was 12, so that also worked out nicely.
I reviewed the game Square. I'm just saying. Just putting that out there. I've also written about Tomb Raider.
Tomb Raider. Yes, so that's my story. And I guess that's my job function is I like to consider myself like your guys' biggest advocate. I like to, I take your guys' feedback and I bring it to the team and I communicate what the team is presenting and doing to you guys, and it's an extremely rewarding job, especially because of days like this. So thank you for coming. Woo!
I'm Kari, Hattner. I'm an associate producer on Tomb Raider. I've worked on the project about 4 years, so I worked with a bunch of different teams over that time, but the final push of the game, I was working in localization, working on bringing the game from English to all of the other territories around the world. I started in games after I graduated college, and I started at Sega in the Dreamcast era, so that was a really, it was really awesome to get to be there at that time. So
tell me one Dreamcast game you worked on.
The first one I worked on was Zambell. And Spasm Arcadia, Fantasy Star,
oh my God.
Shenmue, yeah, I mean, it was... Thank you! So, yeah, no, it's cool that I actually work on a game that, like Tomb Raider, that is as big, I think, for some people, as a lot of those Dreamcast games, so. Okay.
Clap just for Samba de Amigo, please.
Hi, my name is Nicole, and I'm a 3D environment artist at Crystal Dynamics. I work primarily on the hubs and the side teams of the game, basically developing the visuals for the world around Lara, which involve like creating the models and materials and like helping with the lighting to create the atmosphere and the mood, as well as collaborating with design to build the units. I originally actually started pursuing a career in the medical field, but a very accelerated one at that. I graduated high school when I was 9, and then started college.
Oh, it gets worse. Just wait.
And then I started at UC Davis as a biology major, but halfway through I decided that it didn't feel right to me. Wasn't quite what I wanted to do. I love creating things, especially imagery, so I started veering off towards art and graduated from UC Davis at 15, and then and then I started as an art studio major at California State University of Sacramento before realizing that I've always loved games and it just felt right that I combined my two passions, art and games. So I moved down to Southern California where I got a degree at Laguna College of Art and Design for game arts. And shortly after, I was actually hired at Crystal Dynamics as my first job. So, yay,
bit of housekeeping. Can everybody hear Nicole?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Second, I just want you to remember this moment the next time somebody tells you video games are a waste of time. Cam, you're up.
I'm Zambell. I've been working at Crystal Dynamics for the last 2 years, so I came onto the project towards the end. And I focus with 2 teams. I focus with our combat team, developing those challenging, fun experiences between Lara and the enemies. And then I also worked with another team that developed the animation of Lara and the enemies throughout the world, from ziplining, jumping around, traversing the whole area. So how did I get in games? I actually did not study games, and I didn't think I'd end up in this field. I studied linguistics and German language and literature.
Like you do.
But then I had a friend who was an artist in the business and got me a job at localization. And I fell in love with it. And after the first year, I'm like, how in the heck did I end up in games? And my mom sent me this picture of me when I was probably about 8 or 9. And here I was with my Pac-Man cake. I'm like, oh my God, I remember. That was just like Atari 2600, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong. That was my life. And so here I am 12 years later in the business. So.
Awesome. You can see a very diverse, one of the things I love about talking to people in this industry is no 2 people seem to get to their positions the same exact way. They all follow such like divergent paths, as you see here, but the one thing that connects all of them is the love of these games and a passion for it, and I think that really comes through. The one person that we cannot have on the panel, unfortunately, because she could not be with us, is Rihanna Pratchett, the lead writer, but she was kind enough to record a video for us. We asked her some questions about the game, because we definitely wanted to get her point of view to share with you. So we are going to share that with you right now.
Hello PAX, I'm Rihanna Pratchett, I'm the lead writer of Tomb Raider. I'm sorry I can't be with you today, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my role in the game and the reimagining of Lara Croft. We definitely wanted to keep the traits that players associate with Lara, such as bravery, resourcefulness, resilience, etc., and rewind them to a point where they're buried deeper below the surface inside her. So even she's not really conscious of what she's capable of doing. And throughout the game, her actions and her reactions and her reactions to her reactions, they bring these traits to the surface, and you see them emerge, and you're on that journey with her as they emerge. And we also felt that Lara had become a bit of a sort of untouchable ice queen over the years, and we used to call her Teflon Lara because nothing really stuck to her, nothing really changed her, nothing really touched her. And that was kind of something we wanted to look at. We wanted to explore the humanity behind that. We wanted to look at her sense of empathy, her friendships, and what made her tick as a person. And something that I was conscious of when I came on board was the fact that she had sort of a very kind of playgirl reputation, kind of jetting around the world, throwing money left, right and centre, and sort of stealing ancient artefacts for the hell of it. And I didn't really feel that was that relatable in this climate anymore, and so that was something that I wanted to address or explore a little more, and kind of really what was behind that, and who Lara was as a person. And she definitely has a different relationship with her wealth than previous Lara's involved. So she still comes from a wealthy family, but she hasn't touched that wealth, or chooses not to touch that wealth. She sort of even puts it away in investments and trusts, so she can't touch it because her parents are missing. She has access to it, but she doesn't want to touch it. She wants to make her own way in the world and tread her own path. She's very self-reliant in that way, but also touching that money is admitting to herself that they're really gone. So for those reasons, she goes her own way. She puts herself through university. She works several jobs to do so, and she has a very different relationship with that wealth. But as I say, we did keep a lot of the Lara's original traits, but we did sort of look at a period where those traits really sort of came to the surface, because that was the most creatively interesting for us. can't please everyone at the end of the day, and some players will always want their video game heroes to be infallible, and that's fine, but from a creative standpoint it's not terribly interesting, and I think if video games characters are ever going to evolve, then they need to be taken seriously as characters. And for me, it's not really about taking anything away from Lara, it's about showing where those strengths come from. Because you never really get true bravery without fear, and it's that sort of place we wanted to explore, and I don't think it should be seen as a weakness that someone is scared and learns to overcome it. That should be celebrated, really, and it was that journey, and it is a journey for Lara. This game is all about the journey. It's all about story and gameplay coming together to support this journey, and that's kind of what we wanted to show all the way along. I think allowing players to be on that journey, either with Lara or as Lara, is a very, very powerful experience. With that scene, it was largely being judged out of context because so few people had actually played that section of the game, and so it just became assumptions about why it was put in there, who was behind it, what they were thinking at the time, and there were so few reactions out there that were actually based on what there was in the game. And so all I could do, because I wasn't announced at the right at the time, was sort of watch this unfold. And although I absolutely understand people's issues with it, it did sort of almost spiral a little bit out of control until it just became an echo chamber of assumption on assumption, and that was a bit disheartening to see from a creative standpoint. But there wasn't really much I could do about it or address about it until I did get announced as a writer and could talk more about what we were trying to do with that scene and the fact that it is part of a larger whole, it is part of her whole journey and not one transformative moment that suddenly changes her into a badass. And now that players have kind of got to experience it, I mean, that's what we wanted all along. It is about context, it is about seeing sort of everything together and seeing the whole picture. Originally we had more scenes on the endurance at the start, where you would see Lara, you would see the rest of the crew, you get an idea of the expedition they were going on, and it's quite linear in that sense. But we found that there was actually quite a lot to get across right at the start, and what we wanted to do was to get players into the game as quick as possible. So that meant we actually just had the small section at the start, which is on the endurance, and the ship sails into the storm and starts breaking apart, and then she kind of gets washed up on the shore, and then you're into waking up, hanging upside down in the cave. And that got players into the action very fast. It was also a little bit disorientating, which is actually good in some ways because it sort of mirrored the disorientation that Lara's going through, and trying to get player and player character on the same level is always a really beneficial thing to be able to achieve. And so we decided to put those scenes a little bit later. We decided to put them via a video camera, Sam's video camera, which Lara finds on while she's exploring the island. And she views them in quieter moments, and it allows her to reflect on her own sense of guilt and also the stakes that are important to her, that the people around her, the friendships she's made, and the people that should motivate her. And so it actually worked very well, even though we weren't doing it in a linear fashion. It worked well to get the player into the game at the start, and then use these scenes from the past as kind of little kind of emotional triggers and underlying the character's state of mind at the time. So that worked very well. Obviously, I look into the future and how players react to Lara. I hope they like her. I hope they find her more relatable, maybe a more textured character. than she's been in the past. And that they enjoy discovering this piece of the puzzle that's not been shown in the Tomb Raider games before. I hope that they find it entertaining, absorbing, interesting character journey to be part of. I hope this causes them to look at video games characters in the future and maybe demand more of them in terms of diversity, gender, narrative focus, and I also hope other developers look towards their characters and think how better they can serve the audience in ways other than being a pretty thing to look at.
I've had the very, very fortunate privilege to be able to talk to Rihanna many, many times about the characterization of Lara and how she's grown, and you can tell anytime you have a conversation with her, and it comes through in this video here, how much cares, genuinely cares about Lara. And you can also see, she mentioned it a little bit in the beginning, she has complete full backstories for everybody. Stuff that never made it into the game at all, it's just there so that when she's writing the characters, she understands them a little better. So really, really glad that she got to share that with us. But one of the things that she mentioned, and I wanted to bring this up with you, Meagan, is she hopes that people find Lara a little more relatable. And one of the things I found so interesting, and because I didn't see it coming, was when this new Lara came out, and I was so excited that she was relatable, there was this big backlash about, no, don't want relatable Lara, no, want old Lara with the puzzles and the tombs and the, that's a term.
The whole internet at once. Wild gesture.
Throwing a cat. So you as a longtime fan, and now also as a representative for the new game, how do you handle that, like both personally and professionally?
It was interesting because I mentioned this, but I wasn't working for the company the first time I saw it. I was working for Game Informer, and so they actually Crystal had to sell me on the game too. I heard about it, and I heard how different it was going to be, and that this was a full reboot, and not the Lara that I grew up with, and it inspired me and challenged me. And I was worried at first that it wasn't going to be what I wanted or what I was familiar with, but it turns out that it being, unfamiliar was a good thing, I think, turns out in the end. But it's been a challenge. Once I moved on to the Crystal side, it was certainly a challenge to try to make sure that people recognize that this still was Tomb Raider and this still was Lara Croft. I think that maybe, when we came out and announced Tomb Raider, we said, forget everything you know about Tomb Raider. And that might have it kind of embodied that we wanted this to be something fresh and something challenging and something new, but at the same time, it also had the effect of alienating some of our hardcore fans who are like, well, we're going to forget everything we know about Tomb Raider, and why are you calling it Tomb Raider? So throughout the campaign, we kind of had that uphill battle where we had to remind people this is still Lara Croft. This game is still focusing on the three pillars of the combat, the exploration and the traversal, and then the puzzle solving. It's just everything's kind of through that lens of survival, like that's the wrapper around the game that everything's reimagined through. So it most certainly was an uphill battle, and it was something that we had to go in there with every new asset and make sure the right people were seeing the right thing. And it even actually, kind of influenced how some of our trailers or some of our assets, we would feedback from the community and say, no, they're still not sold on this puzzle thing. They don't think there are any in there. We really need to show some of this in the trailer. We really need to show some of this exploration in the trailer, because there was like that disconnect. Mm-hmm. So it was not easy. Long story short, it was not easy, but I really do feel like, as a longtime fan, as a representative, as someone that, speaks for the community in a lot of senses and gathers feedback, I feel like we got the heart, even if it's different, I feel like we got the heart of the experience.
I think that's you mentioned the feedback, and that's something I know a lot of fans wonder about. How much does the feedback actually get through? Are they just shouting into the void and there's people on the other end going, oh yeah, sure? Or how does that work? How do you filter how do you filter the unreasonable from the, oh hey, they have a point?
Well, you certainly will. Volume helps. If you hear the same thing repeatedly, it's usually worth investigating. But I do, just from like a sort of administrative standpoint, I do a lot of weekly reports and recaps and link to the most popular thread topics and things that the community are talking about. And I also take it very seriously. I love talking to people at conventions. I want you to come up to me. I want you to tell me what you loved. I want you to tell me what you would like to see in the future, what you didn't like. And particularly with this game, I think it was a very difficult line to walk, because the team knew the vision they wanted, and they had to stick to their creative guts and deliver that vision, but also take into account, feedback as they're going. The exciting thing is now you guys have played the game, and you can feedback on the entirety of that vision. And so what I'm really excited about is pulling together all the feedback I've been getting from online, which is an incredible amount of feedback. Lots of people talking to you about the game, and it's wonderful. And I'm pulling together those things that I'm hearing repeatedly, and what people would like to see more, and what they loved about this game. And I think that just makes the future for the franchise really, really exciting.
Now, Kari, you worked on it for 4 years, so you saw the entire arc happening.
Yeah.
Now, you're trying to work on a game. You're trying to localize it. Hello, look at all those different languages that this game is being localized into. You got a lot on your plate. Do you shut it all out? Do you shut out the feedback? Do you not read the comments? Do you not read write-ups? And do you just focus, or how do you balance that?
I think I don't pay a lot of attention. I mean, if there was like a big push, like press push, I would maybe look at some feedback. But the important thing, I think, is that on the team is represented all of those people. So I mean, I'm someone that loves puzzles and wasn't especially into Tomb Raider combat in the past, which was not very interesting. It was just like kind of acrobatics.
Doing cartwheels, shooting cheetahs.
Yeah, so I mean, I think as the game goes on, it's like there's those people who are into puzzles who are like, no, we want more puzzles. These puzzles are cool, work more on that, or people who are really into combat or traversal. So I think while, we take feedback that gets kind of, not diluted, what's the opposite of diluted? Condensed.
Concentrated.
Yeah. As indicating that we're on the right track.
So let's talk a little bit about the localization process, because I'm not sure, I think most folks kind of have a vague idea of what that means. So why don't you give us a little tiny crash course about what it is you do?
So we shipped, I think, in 14 languages in the end. 10 of those were fully localized with VO. And so we have to take, I think, like 9,000 audio files and 50,000 words and get them translated into all those languages. So I work with a bunch of people in the UK office who have a whole army of translators and QA testers and recording studios, and they get all that stuff, and then we have to start organizing it. And yeah, it's a lot of work.
One of the things I always wondered about is, because English, especially as a language, has so many idioms in terms of phrase, and what is the process for making sure that what you are trying to say is getting through, because there might not be a direct translation.
Right, yeah, I think, well, when we start the process, we have like a glossary of terms so that you know, okay, these are the names of her weapons, and these are the skills, and those are going to be the important things to maintain throughout each language. But then each culture can kind of translate how they want around that. I mean, they're telling the same story, but they might not make a joke like a Scottish joke or whatever that Grim might say, because it doesn't make sense.
Right, calling the northern bastard.
But they know, he's like the old crotchety guy, so you hear him like in Japanese, and it sounds like exactly like the little old neighbor in any anime.
Now we touched on it briefly just while we were talking before the panel started. There were some unusual changes that had to get made for the Japanese version based on cultural differences.
Yeah, I mean, every territory has like their own equivalent of ESRB, and I'm sure that a lot of people may have heard, you know, games in Germany, sometimes they take blood out, or they make it green, or people are aliens or robots or whatever. And yeah, we didn't have to change anything for Germany, but in Japan they have a problem with open wounds and seeing like guts and body parts. So if you guys have played the game, there are a couple of really kind of gross areas that she gets into.
Charnel housey kind of, yeah.
And so we had to change those a lot, just making them look more like charred and decayed. Apparently that's fine, but
so barbecue, no problem.
Yeah. They didn't like
raw.
You know, Roth cuts his leg open, and it was like no. So it's just sort of like a little more bloody. But
do you ever? Is there ever a situation where you get that kind of request and then say, no, sorry, it has to be this way?
I think we're open. I mean, you know, there's things with the story, like we're not going to change something completely. I think we, you know, you try not to make those decisions when you're going into it. And we're trying to tell kind of a universal story. So we wanted to appeal to the whole world. So we're not trying to alienate someone by, you know, focusing on one message. So yeah, I mean, I think it's hard enough to keep track of changes to the story anyway, then to diverge per territory is just not feasible.
Okay. Now, this is the part I really want to talk to as someone who gets lost in video games a lot. One of the things that Nicole was talking about, which I found amazing, was talking about the lighting, arranging the lighting in certain levels to help guide the player, and the shantytown was a big area that you had worked on, yeah?
Yeah, so the shantytown definitely had a lot of issues with players getting lost in it, especially because it's constructed of a lot of huts and they all kind of look the same. So we constantly had play tension to get lost in the level for hours. Not even exaggerating on that. But so there were a number of things we did, including landmarking, lighting, visual language, to help guide the player, not necessarily force them down one way or the other, but just suggest that they might want to head this direction.
Now, when you say visual language, what do you mean?
For example, if you notice in the game, a lot of the ledges that you can grab on have like a white top to them. That's visual language. It's a ledge grabbable surface.
Okay.
And so,
like we can see in this one, it's one of the over on the right. The white paint is one of the walls that she can clamber up.
Yes. Yeah. But even that had gone through some iterations. I mean, there's back in the day that visual language used to be a red strip with light on top, so we called it the bacon strip, and it was everywhere in our unit, just these horrendous red wood strips. But through some art iteration, we've made it a little more, like, it's still prominent, but it's a little more contextualized, so it feels more natural to the environment. The other thing we did, of course, like landmarking, is key set pieces that kind of drive Lara towards a destination, like the helicopter. But beyond just like the key destinations, even just like distinguish one area from another, for example, that deer in that foreground, was just to like indicate to the player, you know, this is a unique spot. And so if they got lost in this area and they came back and they saw the deer again, they at least have a sense like, oh, I've been here, I kind of know I need to go somewhere else. So it was just a lot of cues like that.
Now, how many, you say that the playtesters would get lost for hours, and that's how you know you really need to work on that.
Yeah.
How much back and forth do you think would you say that there is? And were some sections more problematic than others?
I mean, it's a lot of iteration, both design art, just based on playtesting feedback. I mean, Meagan tested it too. When we first built the shantytown, we had, I mean, for the designers and the artists, for us, it felt like we knew the path. It was pretty obvious and apparent. We felt like it was pretty well laid out, but then playtesting came in and it was like, no, this was not working. We had to do a lot of rearrangement, and we started changing a lot of like the key set pieces. So in the second part of Shantytown, it used to be a lot more hut-like as well. But we ended up building more like girder type structures, just like get some distinction so that people would hopefully start separating the areas a little more, and that helped guide the players as well. But it's not just like, it's hard to count how many iterations we made. It was, for a while, every other week or so, we'd have playtests and we'd like to change something else, and it just kept coming back.
And after a while, are you just like, can we get smarter playtesters?
That has occasionally come up from the designers.
Now, Cam, you were telling me that you get given something like Shantytown,
Right.
and the visual effects folks were like, yes, this is definitely a matterless, and you're like, I can't put combat in that. So how does that give and take work, and with your role as producer?
Yeah, so I worked with the combat team, and so once you've got the environment laid out, like Nicole does, we actually go in there with some combat designers, and we'll actually pick out spots within that area to actually do combat counters. For Shantytown, this is a pretty dynamic area to do combat, so we spent a lot of time basically setting up multiple combat areas in there and making sure we're scripting them correctly so you couldn't, for example, drag all the enemies to the gate area, right? So what we did when we worked with the level team, the environmental team, was like, hey, we need to actually make some cover spots here, and so they would come in and actually, you know, develop a cover area for us over here, or we need to move around certain set pieces so that we can actually make a combat encounter in a certain area. So our combat designers would go in, we would make our combat area, and then we'd probably usually pass it back to the artists who would change a few things here and there, and then we would get rid of like, somebody took our cover. So we'd have to go back and rearrange a few things. So there was a lot of back and forth between the artists and the designers to actually create the environment as well as encounters in that area.
So does it does it always start with the visual and then the combat is put into it, or does it ever flow in the opposite direction?
For this game in particular, we actually started out with the environments. But generally, from my opinion, basically understanding what the combat encounters are going to be in that space, that gameplay space, as you're developing the visual side of it, is equally important. That, in essence, minimizes the back and forth you have to do with art and then, you know, the combat design. So for this particular case here, we already had the art built. So we actually had, you know, design within that space, which made it very challenging, but we created something of great quality. So.
Now how does that work with the traversing? Because I would have to imagine, no I can't, I'm not that smart. I can't actually imagine how that works with the, you know, and the hook and the thing, and I'm climbing and I'm going back, and do you start with we want to have a big web of ropes and stuff that she can be crisscrossing, or does it start with the environment and then you build the traversing on top of it?
I can't quite answer that one. We wanted to have traversal as well as combat in that space, so basically we had all those elements we needed to work with, and they all came together, and it was just, again, a lot of massaging back and forth, you know. I can't speak too much for the art side of it. Nicole, me, like, with Jason bought it too, was working on that, as far as where we're putting zip lines and where Laura can climb up. But as you notice in this area, it's pretty dynamic. You have a lot of up and, you know, different levels. You can go back and forth, and you can come back to the beginning and go back to the fire gate. So,
which is why I kept getting lost.
And I actually played this area like a couple days ago. I didn't play the game in about a month, and I got to where she got the fire out, and I was like, oh my gosh, this area, it took me forever to get through it. I've forgotten how challenging it can be, but how fun.
That's a long stop.
I can say I put the controller down, I'm like, okay, I can't get through this. I'm coming back in 10 minutes.
Blame the playtesters. That is actually one question that I have, because you hear a lot of actors who say that when they're done filming a movie, they never watch it. Do you guys play the game? And if so, how many times?
Yes.
I mean, I know you have to play it while you're making it, you have to, but when it's all done and shipped and boom, do you ever touch it again?
I do, in my past games, but again, it's like I am finished with the game and I'm either out for a whole month just recouping, and then I'll slowly pick it up again, you know, and you're like, oh, this is really great. I mean, you start paying attention to all those details that take you like weeks to develop, and you're like, wow, this is great.
Do you kind of almost forget that all of the little pieces that went into it when you actually just get a little break and then go back into it?
I started picking out all the pieces, and I haven't really spent a lot of time on this particular area of the game, and it's like, it really shows. And then there's some areas like, oh my God, we really spent a lot of time, but it just glosses over you. You know, you get so close to the details of the game that you forget about the bigger picture at times. And then when you actually play it, you know, a month later afterwards, you're like, wow, this is awesome.
Okay, so we're going to leave a little bit of time for some Q&A. So we're going to have 2 lines, one in either aisle. A microphone will be coming to you. The handsome gentleman holding the... He's not just doing it for his health. He would like you to ask questions. So if people would like to queue up in an orderly fashion, and then we will just pass the mic, and we will alternate back and forth. I can't... It's like there are 4 lights. It's just... Thank you. There you go.
Now we can see all your...
That is very helpful. Okay, and we will go back and forth between the two. We'll start with you. One bit of housekeeping. If you have a question, please direct it to the appropriate person that it is for, and just one question per, if you don't mind.
Hi there. I love the game. Great job. Nicole, can you add a cruise liner into the game? Because it seems an inordinate amount of bodies are around this island, and they seem kind of fresh, so it's kind of strange when you're going through and there's like 1 million dead bodies in this town. But yeah, it's just a little kind of funny.
Are you saying this town in specific?
The whole island. They may be World War II soldiers from years ago, but it also seems like a lot of them are kind of fresh, so.
Yeah, I mean, there are some ships that are in the distance. If you reach level, you look out in the vista, we do have some shipwrecks there, but I mean, the thought line is they're shipwrecked, they sunk for the most part, so I think it was kind of a call that we put what we needed to, and that's kind of where it was.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie. Amazing game. When it was finishing, I felt like it was a book, but you didn't want it to end. You didn't want to read that last page. So I have a question about one of the achievements. I think this would be a question for Meagan.
I know what one it is.
2 weeks ago, Adam Sessler made a point about the bros before hoes achievement in God of War being sexist. And so then there was uproar on the internet about the Widowmaker achievement being as sexist. So I want to know if you actually received a lot of comments about that, or was it just a select few on the internet?
I actually have not. I totally would. I was not joking. I thought you were going to bring up the shopaholic achievement. We just talk about that. No, I actually hadn't heard any internet uproar about that. It might have been just a few select comments, but now that you have brought it to my attention, and I have lots and lots and lots and lots of alerts set up for almost everything imaginable, so I will. I'm going to seek that out, and I'm going to look into it a bit more. But I'm most certainly interested in that, and I think Sessler's a pretty good head on his shoulders, so I'd be interested in looking into it.
Thank you.
Okay, I have to interrupt and Bogart for one moment. Someone needs to explain the damn crab achievement to me.
I will! Okay, so we love our community, and we have a really, really active forum community. Obviously, these people have been on these boards for sometimes like 15 years, and they make a mascot out of each game. And this one, they decided to call the crab from the Turning Point trailer. Has like a little heart on its back in the Turning Point trailer, the first trailer you see. They decided to name it Fifi. And so naturally, I thought we should kill it and award you for it. So, that was something that we put in, and we thought, if only like 10,000 people get it, that's fine. Yay! Crab cakes, it's called crab cakes.
Yeah, my husband was playing, and he was like, I killed the special crab, and I'm like,
they're all special.
The first one you kill is...
Isn't it amazing? The first crab you find is always Fifi.
Hi there. This is a question for Nicole. When I first started playing Tomb Raider, I noticed as a Shinto, the Torii gates are set up. And Torii gates are meant to represent when you go through them that you're entering something not of this realm. And of course the game has a slight spiritual element. But one thing I came across in the concept art in the very beginning is when you come across a body and Lara's all like, oh God, it's actually called a shrine to Amaterasu, which is the Shinto sun goddess, who I'm guessing is different from Himiko and Yamatai. So when you were designing the environments for this game, were there specific Shinto elements besides just the Torii Gate that you drew from for inspiration for Yamatai, or?
Unfortunately, I didn't work on that unit, nor I think that's more on the narrative side than it is actually on the art direction side, because we do draw a lot of our sources from the narrative as well. So I don't have the answer to that one, I'm afraid.
All right.
Didn't Brian go outside? Brian and Noel, so they were out in Japan for quite some time and did lots and lots of research and photos and reference and all that.
Yes.
So I know that line of accuracy, but also some creative freedoms was important to them.
Hi, thank you, Steve. I do think that you really did achieve something.
Who's it for?
I guess the writer, maybe. No, it's not quite.
Okay, that one's going to be tough.
This is a bit of a comment maybe for the whole game, because I really feel that perhaps you achieved something a little bit bigger, and that, you know, and cross-gender as well, and that when you're climbing to the top of the tower on the top of the island, and there's a cut scene where you know you get like a camera view all around, and she's reached the top, and she's now ultimately the Lara Croft that we know from previous games, because she's so confident, and that I felt a little bit like I was there. So like you've achieved with all of the nuances of developing her personality and her combat style and everything else like that I felt to a degree that when I was there at the top, that she did progress to get to the point that she was at the top. So,
So pretty much just yay is what he's saying.
I should always be honest with something as a fan, like I still get chills seeing that scene. I love it. But what I really appreciate about that scene is there's that scene in the base camp prior where Lara's asking Roth in tears, come get me. She is so terrified. She's seen dead bodies. She's shipwrecked. She was, like all these things have happened. And at the top of that tower, the last word she says is, I can do this. And that shift from come help me to, okay, I can do this, is just so powerful, I think. So, I love that.
Sorry. Please, no multiplayer DLC, make more tunes.
All right, we all knew somebody was going to say it, so.
That guy.
So it's that guy.
Hello. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
My question's actually for Meagan. Also, I've actually beaten the game 3 times. One on each difficulty, and Platinum did like 137 this morning.
Wow. Round of applause.
Yeah, clap for that. Go ahead. Seriously, though, go to bed.
I can't. I'm wired off of free energy drinks.
Yes.
Thank you again, by the way. My question is actually, crap, I just had it.
Either ask or back in line.
I got it. Like the whole storyline. Like while I was playing it, there's only one thing that came to the back of my mind, and I was wondering if you ever got any feedback. Was it when this game was being made? Did you ever think that you guys were actually, Nolanizing this game?
Oh, no.
Because honestly, that's the only thing I thought about was.
I'm glad she didn't actually sound like that. Without question, we've said several times that Batman and Bond were kind of the two Hollywood inspirations for Tomb Raider. They played the idea of these incredibly iconic characters with extremely passionate fan bases. And these two franchises being able to be reimagined so that you're there and you see those iconic moments and you're on those journeys with them. But also, in addition to that, we actually had a lot of inspiration from survival stories, and even, I'm sure some of you guys have been in horror movies, you saw a little bit of The Descent in there and so on. So there's a huge variety of inspiration that was drawn from there. But I do think that most certainly you can draw that parallel of an iconic character being, reborn, being reimagined, and seeing that progression from the beginning, evolution from the beginning.
All right, thank you.
This is for the team as a whole. It was a great game. Like I said, I'm very pleased with the challenge factor of it. Like I said, and I'm one that tries to appreciate it, so I'm not going to rush through it. But I have a question to ask. What are your plans for non-multiplayer DLC, like an actual something?
We're not, nope.
Nothing.
That's not this panel, nope.
Not this panel.
Sorry.
Okay. But another.
See, I know.
Okay. Quick question. One last question. Was there any thoughts, with multiplayer in like a cooperative aspect through either this game or maybe a follow-up, in maybe bringing in this like a sidekick or some kind of like partner on the team?
We're not, again, like stuff for future plans, not really the purview of this panel. It's,
We can say though that from this game, and you can see if you, I'm not trying to just talk the app, but there is this, Jeff Keighley did the Final Hours of Tomb Raider app, and you can see in some of the early concepts, Lara had a little girl companion. Like there was a co-op sort of companion element in that. It wasn't necessarily like a playable character, but there were lots of different approaches explored, and obviously this is the direction that was taken because it was the best, experience for Lara to be that isolated single player experience. I didn't want to like shut you down twice. I'm sorry.
It's totally great question. It's just, like they just shipped a game, brother. Like let them breathe.
Everybody keeps asking me when the next one's coming, and I'm like, give us some nap time. I'm still not sleeping much, so.
Thank you. This side.
Hi, my name's Chris. Great game, love the game. This question's for Meagan. Kind of building off your last statement about the app and the Final Hours of Tomb Raider. There was also a segment where Jeff Keighley mentioned at some point in the game's development it was going to have more of a Shadow of the Colossus feel. At what point was that scrapped and why?
That was definitely before my time. By the time that I came onto Tomb Raider, I was actually shown the Den demo, the opening of the game. Really different looking, but like that's when I was first introduced to it. Can any of you guys see them? Anybody down there, can you weigh in that earlier process, or is that another one that's kind of more?
I think it was, again, this was really early, I think, in the game, was more of the inspiration of that feeling of like her being alone and kind of having this, like, so daunting, Shadow of the Colossus is like a really young boy character, right? I haven't played that, sadly. But it's like, you see this ginormous thing, and it's like, how are you going to accomplish that? And I think that was kind of the inspiration. I don't know that there was ever,
and also I think
like a direct gameplay,
maybe more emotional tone.
Yeah, I know that the team had done a ton of iterating on early concepts that were like wildly fantastical. Like you see some concept art, Lara's got like a monkey that follows around her shoulder, another one she's got this little girl, and there was the whole horse riding gameplay and experiential stuff, and also the Shadow of the Colossus sort of angle. But I know that once they found that survival theme, once that's the theme that really, really resonated with the group, what will people do when they are forced with their own survival, when their lives are on the line, or the lives of those they love are on the line. That is really what I think scaled back some of those things, so that the game could be, there's obviously some fantastical elements to the game, but it's a journey getting there. And I'm not entirely sure of having this giant colossus.
And fantastical, it's like certainly not like, the kind of Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, and I think that maybe that fantastical element would have overshadowed some of Lara's personal growth and journey. So I think I would have loved to have seen some of those things in theory, but I think that scaling it back really did a service to it.
Yeah, it would have distracted, I think, from the core emotional element of her.
Yeah, and it's a lot less of a mystery. If you just see like this incredible monster in front of you, you're like, well, that happened, that exists.
Yeah.
There's a lot less nuance in it. You're trying to like uncover the truth as you go. So,
great question, thank you. This side?
Good morning, ladies. My question's for the two producers. You touched on the puzzles for Tomb Raider, and I remember, I go from being, a sixth grader begging my mom to buy me the strategy guide to Brian's Note because I don't know what to do. And now we have the puzzles that I think make more sense in the context of the game, but we have these tools that are at our disposal, like survival instincts, which show you the things you can interact with. And one thing that I admit gets on my nerves as a gamer sometimes when I get into a room and 30 seconds later Lara starts inner monologue. I'm like, oh, those barrels look flammable. It's like, Lara, you have a beautiful voice, sweetie, but you gotta give me a minute. But I guess
because that wasn't condescending.
I wasn't trying to be, sorry. I guess what I'm saying is what kind of goes into your thought process on balancing, the way puzzles used to be done and how they're now done?
I don't know if I'm the right person. Well, I mean, I can speak to some of this too, that basically because of that wrapper survival, they wanted to make sure that the elements that comprise the puzzles were things that you can understand in the real world. So physics, buoyancy, fire elements, and so on. I think that inherently makes them, I've been hearing feedback that some people consider the puzzles a bit too easy, a bit too short. I think that inherently being comprised of those things makes them a little bit easier to process and understand. But again, the team worked really hard to be able to rework them and reimagine them in kind of interesting and tricky ways. But they also wanted the puzzles to make sense in the context of the environment. So they weren't just puzzles, they weren't just random puzzles in these spaces. She would say something like, oh, this looks like some sort of a storage device, or this is for sorting the flotsam and jetsam and so on. In regards to Lara sort of monologuing and so on, that is definitely feedback that we've heard. I know that some people would like more challenging puzzles in the future. I think that the foundation that was laid is really incredible and it's really promising, and I like the idea of having these more intuitive challenges because it's less about finding a lever in one room that does something in another room but doesn't necessarily make sense. So I think that it was that balance of trying to establish this sort of tool set and to try to make that challenging.
Also, I mean, if you think about it, if you were washed up on an island and suddenly came into a room where there's a lever in one room and then it does a thing in another room, you'd be like, I'm sorry, what?
Someone mentioned that we do a lot of play testing. So you kind of, when you build a level or a puzzle or a combat encounter or anything, you kind of make the hardest one you ever see. It would never ship that way. And what happens is people are like, I don't get it. I don't know what to do. And then you go and you make like the bacon ledges where it's like, it's really obvious. And then people are like, oh yeah, I knew exactly where to go. And they go through like the shanty town in like 10 minutes. And you're like, okay, no, we want you to explore. We just want you to know where to go when you want to know where to go. So I think for puzzles specifically, a lot of that, you'll find that there was probably feedback that people didn't know what to do.
That's fair. Thank you for shedding your insight on that. And you guys created something really special with this game. I love the character, what you've done with Lara. Everything is great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have one last surprise for you, a special treat. A brand new song about Tomb Raider from Miracle of Sound, The Escapist, which we are debuting here at PAX just for you guys because you showed up. So let's take a look at that.
Gotta break the stranglehold. I see
There's a special discount, a Tomb Raider swag, much of which you can see on the ladies here. It happens automatically, you don't need a code or anything, and there's some other stuff happening at the booth, I believe.
Yes, so if you guys want to come down to the Square Enix booth, we're doing some fun stuff every day. From 10 to noon, we're doing Kick Energy giveaways. Figure early, relatively, probably use some energy on the show floor. We also are giving away, we have these Tomb Raider tattoos, so if you put one of these on and you return to the booth any day during PAX from 1 to 4, we're giving away the hardcover editions of Tomb Raider: The Beginning, which you actually cannot buy anywhere. So it's kind of fun to do that, and we have them in different sizes. And we have like other things. We have a cosplay gathering tomorrow at 2 at the Square Enix booth. We have some trivia on Sunday, and just lots of other fun stuff. And I do want to say, if any of you guys did have further questions, you know, I know we're going to hang out around outside of it. We'd love to chat with you guys. This is one of the best parts of the job, so feel free to come up and say hello.
That's it. Thank you all so much for coming.